Take a moment, not because everything is fine, but because everything feels loud, because your mind has been running without rest, jumping from worry to comparison, from memory to fear, from pressure to expectation, because even when your body is still, something inside you keeps moving, keeps pushing, keeps asking for answers it cannot yet hold. Most people today are not tired from doing too much. They are tired from thinking too much, from feeling pulled in too many directions, from trying to be everything at once. You wake up already behind, you scroll and see lives that look more certain than yours. You speak, but often feel misunderstood. You stay busy yet feel empty. And slowly, without noticing, you begin to lose trust in your own inner voice. This is not because you are broken. It is because no one taught you how to stand calmly inside yourself. From a young age, we are trained to chase movement, noise, and approval. We are rewarded for speed, for reaction, for expression without reflection. But no one teaches us how to pause without guilt, how to feel without being consumed, how to be alone without feeling abandoned. So when pressure comes, as it always does, we collapse inward or explode outward. Many people are walking through life emotionally untrained. They feel deeply, but they don't know how to hold those feelings. They love, but they cling. They want peace, but they keep feeding the very habits that steal it. And in moments of silence instead of rest, they meet anxiety. If this feels familiar, you are not alone. And you do not need motivation. You do not need more information. You do not need someone to tell you to be positive. What you need is grounding. Grounding is not escape. It is not pretending things don't hurt. It is the ability to stay present when life becomes uncomfortable. It is the skill of remaining stable while emotions rise and fall. It is learning to observe your inner world without being dragged by it. This moment, right now, is an invitation to stop running from yourself. Not to fix everything, not to solve your entire life, but to sit, to breathe, to listen, to realize that clarity does not arrive through force, but through order. That peace is not something you chase, but something you remove obstacles from. This talk is not here to excite you, it is here to settle you, to remind you that strength can be quiet, that discipline can be gentle, and that your mind, when trained, can become a place of refuge instead of chaos. So take this moment seriously. Let the noise wait, let the world slow down, and allow yourself to return inward, where real stability begins. Take a moment, not to escape your life, but to finally arrive in it. Stillness is often misunderstood. Many believe that if they slow down, they will fall behind. If they pause, they will lose momentum. If they stop reacting, they will lose control. But the opposite is true. A mind that cannot be still is a mind that is easily controlled by emotion, by fear, by other people's expectations. Stillness is not weakness. It is trained strength. When you sit with yourself in silence, you begin to notice how restless the mind truly is. Thoughts appear without invitation. Memories surface without warning. Concerns repeat themselves even when nothing new is happening. This is not a problem. This is awareness beginning. Most people live their entire lives inside mental noise, believing that noise is who they are. They identify with every thought, every feeling, every impulse. When anger arises, they become angry. When sadness comes, they collapse into it. When desire appears, they chase it without question. This is not freedom, this is unconsciousness. Stillness creates space, and space creates choice. In stillness, you learn that you do not have to obey every thought. You do not have to react to every emotion. You can feel without acting. You can observe without judging. Over time, this changes the way you move through the world. You become slower to speak but clearer, slower to react but more precise, slower to judge but deeper in understanding. This is where real confidence is built, not from loud expression, but from inner stability. You are not your thoughts, but you are responsible for them. Thoughts arise from conditioning, experience, fear, and habit. They are shaped by your past, your environment, and the stories you've been told about who you should be. If you treat every thought as truth, you give your power away. If you learn to question them, to observe them, to let them pass, you begin to reclaim that power. Responsibility does not mean control through force. It means awareness through discipline. When a negative thought appears, the untrained mind either believes it or fights it. Both lead to exhaustion. The trained mind observes it, recognizes it as temporary, and chooses not to build a home inside it. This takes practice, and practice takes patience. Emotional regulation is not suppression, it is containment. Imagine a strong river. If it has no banks, it floods everything around it. If it has structure, it becomes a source of life. Your emotions are the same. Without discipline, they overwhelm you and others. With discipline, they nourish clarity, connection, and purpose. This is why emotional discipline is the foundation of self-respect. When you respect yourself, you do not abandon yourself in moments of discomfort. You do not say things you cannot stand behind. You do not act in ways that weaken your character just to release pressure. You learn to sit with discomfort without needing to destroy something to escape it. Self-respect grows quietly. It grows every time you pause instead of react, every time you breathe instead of explode, every time you choose restraint over regret. And slowly, something shifts. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to feel safe inside your own presence. You no longer need constant validation because you are no longer at war with your inner world. This is not a dramatic transformation. It is a disciplined one. And discipline, when practiced with patience, becomes peace. Emotional discipline is the foundation of self-respect. Most people misunderstand what self-respect actually is. They think it is confidence, or boundaries, or being outspoken, or demanding better treatment from others. Those things may appear on the surface, but they are not the foundation. Self-respect begins much earlier, much quieter, in moments no one else sees. When you are tired, when you are triggered, when you are disappointed, when you are alone with your thoughts. Self-respect is how you treat yourself when no one is watching. Without emotional discipline, respect for the self becomes fragile. It depends on mood, on praise, on how others respond to you. One good interaction and you feel strong. One rejection and you collapse. This is not stability. This is dependence. Emotional discipline is the ability to stay internally aligned even when emotions rise. It does not mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being ruled. When anger appears, discipline does not deny it. It acknowledges it without letting it decide your next action. When sadness comes, discipline allows it to be felt without letting it define your worth. When desire pulls you, discipline asks whether acting on it will strengthen or weaken your character. This is where self-respect is built, not in comfort but in restraint. Many people betray themselves emotionally every day. They say yes when they mean no. They speak harshly when silence would protect their integrity. They chase attention that leaves them emptier than before. Each time this happens, something inside quietly erodes, not dramatically, gradually. You may not notice it at first, but over time you stop trusting yourself. You begin to feel internally divided, wanting peace, yet choosing chaos, wanting clarity, yet feeding distraction. This inner contradiction is deeply exhausting. Emotional discipline repairs this fracture. It teaches you to pause between feeling and action. That pause is everything. Inside it lives choice. Inside it lives dignity. Inside it lives the possibility of responding from your values instead of your impulses. A disciplined emotional life is not cold. It is warm and steady. It allows space for compassion without self-abandonment. It allows love without dependency. It allows strength without aggression. When you are emotionally disciplined, you no longer need to prove yourself through reaction. You do not need to win every argument. You do not need to explain yourself to everyone. You do not need to discharge every emotion outward just to feel relief. You learn that relief without wisdom is expensive. It always costs you later. Discipline teaches you to absorb emotion without letting it poison your behavior. This is not repression. Repression pushes emotions down until they resurface stronger. Discipline holds emotions gently but firmly, like guiding a child rather than locking them in a room. This changes your relationships. You begin to listen more and interrupt less. You respond instead of defend. You can disagree without becoming hostile. You can be close to others without losing yourself. People begin to feel safer around you, not because you are passive, but because you are predictable in your integrity. And slowly, you begin to feel safer around yourself. This safety is essential. Without it, the mind is always tense, always scanning for threat, always preparing to react. With it, the nervous system softens. You breathe deeper, you sleep better, you think more clearly. Self-respect is not loud. It does not announce itself. It reveals itself through consistency. Consistency in how you speak, consistency in how you act under pressure, consistency in how you treat yourself when you fail. Failure is inevitable. Emotional discipline does not eliminate mistakes. It determines how you relate to them. Without discipline, failure becomes identity. You tell yourself stories of inadequacy, weakness, or hopelessness. You replay moments, punish yourself mentally, and carry me longer than necessary. This is not accountability. This is cruelty disguised as self-awareness. With discipline, failure becomes information. You observe what happened without collapsing into judgment. You correct course without self-hatred. You move forward without dragging the past behind you. This is mature strength. A disciplined emotional life also teaches you when to walk away. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Not because you cannot handle something, but because you know what drains you unnecessarily. You stop engaging in conversations that only inflame. You stop chasing dynamics that destabilize you. You stop explaining yourself to people who are not listening. This is not withdrawal. It is alignment. And alignment builds respect. From yourself first, then from others. People often ask how to build confidence. Confidence is not built by hype or repetition of affirmations. It is built by keeping small promises to yourself. Emotional discipline is how you keep those promises under pressure. You promise yourself not to react impulsively. You promise yourself to pause before responding. You promise yourself to act in ways you can stand behind tomorrow. Each time you honor these promises, something solid forms inside you, something calm, something reliable. That reliability is self-respect. Over time, you no longer need external approval to feel stable. Compliments are appreciated, but not required. Criticism is considered, but not devastating. You remain rooted. This rooting is especially important in a world that constantly pulls at your attention and emotions. News, social media, conflict, comparison, everything competes to provoke you. Without discipline, you are constantly thrown off center. With it, you remain steady even as the world moves quickly around you. Emotional discipline is not a personality trait. It is a practice, and like any practice, it begins imperfectly. You will react sometimes. You will say things you wish you hadn't. You will feel emotions more intensely than you want to. Discipline does not demand perfection, it demands responsibility. Responsibility means you notice sooner, you recover faster, you learn more deeply, and gradually the space between impulse and action grows wider. In that space, your true values begin to speak. You realize that peace matters more than being right, that dignity matters more than attention, that inner order matters more than temporary relief. This realization changes how you move through life. You become less scattered, less reactive, less consumed by drama, both external and internal. You begin to experience a quiet confidence that does not depend on circumstances. A confidence rooted in knowing that whatever arises inside you, you can meet it without losing yourself. That is self-respect, not something you demand, something you demonstrate. And it begins with emotional discipline. Practice patiently, daily, in small moments that shape the person you are becoming. Clarity comes from restraint, not reaction. Most people believe clarity arrives when they finally say everything they feel, when they release every emotion immediately, when they act the moment an impulse appears. They confuse expression with truth, but expression without restraint often clouds the mind instead of clearing it. Clarity is not something you chase, it is something that emerges when you stop disturbing your inner space. Every reaction stirs the water. Every impulsive response creates more noise. When the mind is constantly reacting, it cannot see clearly because it is always in motion. Like a lake disturbed by wind, nothing reflects accurately when the surface is restless. Restraint is what allows the water to settle. Restraint does not mean silence forever. It means timing. It means knowing when to speak and when to wait, when to act and when to observe. It means understanding that not every emotion deserves immediate expression, and not every thought deserves belief. This is difficult in a world that rewards instant reaction. You are encouraged to respond quickly, to share immediately, to take a position before understanding the whole picture. Speed is praised, stillness is misunderstood. But clarity does not move fast. When you practice restraint, you give yourself time to see more fully. You notice the emotion beneath the emotion. You recognize patterns instead of isolated events. You see how past experiences are coloring present moments. Reaction keeps you trapped in the surface. Restraint takes you deeper. Consider how often confusion comes from words spoken too soon, messages sent in emotional heat, decisions made to escape discomfort rather than to honor truth. These moments may feel relieving at first, but they often create long-term consequences. Misunderstandings, regret, damaged trust. Restraint protects you from yourself. It allows emotion to pass through you without solidifying into action prematurely. Most emotions are temporary. If you give them space, they soften, transform, or dissolve on their own. When you react too quickly, you turn something fleeting into something permanent. Clarity requires patience. Patience is not passive. It is active presence without interference. It is the discipline of staying with discomfort long enough for understanding to arise. This is why restraint is powerful. It requires strength to remain still when everything inside you wants to move. Over time, restraint trains your perception. You begin to recognize the difference between urgency and importance, between emotional impulse and aligned action, between wanting relief and wanting truth. This changes how you think. Your thoughts slow down. They become less repetitive, less dramatic. You stop rehearsing arguments that may never happen. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios as if they are facts. You stop feeding the mind with unnecessary stimulation. And in this quieter mental space, clarity begins to appear naturally. Clarity is not loud. It does not argue. It does not rush. It feels calm, simple, and obvious once it arrives. Often, clarity feels less exciting than confusion because confusion is full of movement and drama. Clarity is plain, direct, grounded. Many people avoid restraint because they fear losing their voice. But restraint does not silence you, it refines you. When you finally speak from clarity, your words carry weight. They are fewer but truer. They are less emotional but more precise. This is especially important in relationships. When you react, you often speak from hurt rather than understanding. You try to protect yourself by defending, blaming, or withdrawing. These reactions create distance, even when your intention is connection. Restraint allows you to listen before responding, to understand before explaining, to pause before assuming. It allows you to respond from what matters rather than from what hurts. In conflict, restraint does not mean avoiding difficult conversations. It means approaching them with a steady mind. You do not seek to win. You seek to understand and to be understood. This approach dissolves tension rather than escalating it. Clarity also changes how you make decisions. Instead of deciding based on fear or pressure, you begin to wait for inner alignment. You notice when a decision feels forced versus when it feels grounded. You recognize when you are moving to please others instead of honoring yourself. This waiting is not procrastination. It is discernment. Discernment grows when you stop reacting to every external stimulus, when you limit how much noise you consume, when you create space between yourself and constant input. The mind cannot be clear if it is always being filled. Restraint in consumption is just as important as restraint in reaction. What you read, watch, listen to, and engage with shapes your inner world. If you constantly feed your mind chaos, urgency, and comparison, clarity will feel distant. But when you choose simplicity, the mind reorganizes itself. You begin to see what truly matters, what aligns with your values, what deserves your energy, what does not. Clarity brings confidence. Not the loud kind, but the steady kind. The confidence that comes from knowing where you stand and why. The confidence that allows you to say no without guilt and yes without doubt. And once clarity is present, action becomes easier. You no longer need to overthink every step. You move with intent. Ion. You act decisively without being impulsive. You trust your direction because it comes from understanding rather than reaction. This is the quiet power of restraint. It does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It simply creates space. And in that space, truth becomes visible. Clarity was never missing. It was waiting for you to stop disturbing it. Loneliness ends when you learn to sit with yourself. Most people believe loneliness comes from the absence of others. They think it will disappear once they find the right relationship, the right group, the right sense of belonging. And while connection is important, this belief hides a deeper truth. Many people feel lonely even when surrounded by others, because they have never learned how to be present with themselves. Loneliness is not always about being alone. Often, it is about being disconnected from your own inner life. When you cannot sit with yourself, silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels heavy. Being alone feels like rejection rather than rest, so you seek distraction. You fill the space with noise, conversation, entertainment, constant engagement. Not because it nourishes you, but because it keeps you from facing what arises when everything quiets down. What arises is usually not emptiness, but unresolved emotion, unfelt sadness, unacknowledged fear, unmet needs, old memories, questions you've been avoiding. These things surface when you're alone, not to punish you, but to be seen. Yet most people interpret this surfacing as a sign that something is wrong, that they are broken, that they must escape. So they keep running, but running only deepens loneliness, because the one person you can never leave is yourself. Learning to sit with yourself is not about enjoying every moment of solitude. It is about developing the capacity to remain present even when the inner experience is uncomfortable. It is about staying instead of abandoning yourself. This is a skill, and like all skills, it begins awkwardly. At first, sitting with yourself feels restless. The mind searches for stimulation, the body fidgets, thoughts race. You may feel boredom, anxiety, or sadness without knowing why. This is normal. You are simply becoming aware of what was already there, hidden beneath activity. If you stay gently, patiently, something changes. The mind begins to settle, not because you force it, but because it no longer needs to shout for attention. Emotions soften when they are allowed space. They lose intensity when they are no longer resisted. And in this quiet presence, you begin to recognize yourself, not the roles you play, not the image you present, but the human being beneath all of that. This recognition is powerful. When you learn to be with yourself, you stop expecting others to complete you. You stop asking relationships to fill an inner void they were never meant to fill. You approach connection from wholeness rather than hunger. This transforms how you relate to others. You become less clingy, less dependent on constant reassurance. You listen more deeply because you are not using conversation to escape yourself. You can enjoy time with others without fearing time alone. Paradoxically, learning to be alone well makes you better at being together. Loneliness often persists because people confuse self-connection with self-indulgence. Sitting with yours self does not mean endlessly analyzing your feelings or amplifying your thoughts. It means observing without judgment, feeling without exaggeration, allowing without drowning. This creates emotional maturity. You realize that emotions are experiences, not identities. You can feel sadness without becoming sad as a person. You can feel longing without becoming empty. You can feel uncertainty without becoming lost. This distinction is essential. When you are comfortable with yourself, solitude becomes restorative instead of threatening. It becomes a place where you recharge, reflect, and realign. Silence becomes supportive rather than oppressive. You stop fearing nights alone. Quiet mornings no longer feel heavy. Waiting no longer feels unbearable. This does not mean you no longer desire connection. It means you desire it from a grounded place. Many relationships fail not because of lack of love, but because of unexamined loneliness. Two people trying to escape themselves through each other will eventually feel disappointed no matter how strong the initial bond. But when you have learned to sit with yourself, you bring presence instead of need, stability instead of expectation. You become a place of calm rather than pressure. This also changes how you experience rejection or distance. Without self-connection, distance feels like abandonment. Silence feels personal. You assume something is wrong with you. With self-connection, distance becomes neutral. Silence becomes space. You remain intact even when others pull away. This is resilience. Loneliness also softens when you stop judging your inner world. Many people feel lonely because they are constantly criticizing themselves. They do not enjoy their own company because it is filled with harsh commentary, comparison, and unrealistic demands. When you learn to sit with yourself kindly, that inner environment changes. Kindness does not mean indulgence. It means honesty without cruelty. It means acknowledging where you are without shaming yourself for not being further along. It means allowing growth to happen gradually. As this inner relationship heals, loneliness loosens its grip. You realize that you were never truly alone. You were just disconnected. And connection, once rebuilt inwardly, naturally extends outward. You choose relationships more wisely. You tolerate less disrespect. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You recognize the difference between being needed and being valued. Most importantly, you stop feeling abandoned when you are by yourself. You feel accompanied by your own presence. This is not isolation, it is integration. When you can sit with yourself, you carry a sense of home wherever you go. You no longer need constant noise to feel alive. You no longer fear empty space. You understand that solitude and connection are not opposites, they support each other. Loneliness ends not when someone arrives, but when you stop leaving yourself. A grounded life is built through daily inner order. Many people search for stability by changing their surroundings. They move cities, switch careers, chase new relationships, redesign their routines again and again, hoping that somewhere out there is a version of life that will finally feel settled. Sometimes change is necessary, but without inner order, no external arrangement holds for long. Inner chaos, Eve, eventually reshapes outer life. A grounded life does not begin with big decisions. It begins with small, repeated acts of alignment. How you wake up, how you speak to yourself, how you respond to stress, how you care for your body, how you close the day. These quiet patterns shape your nervous system, your mindset, and your sense of direction far more than dramatic moments ever will. Daily inner order is not rigidity, it is rhythm. It means creating a predictable relationship with yourself. A relationship where your mind knows what to expect, your emotions feel contained, and your energy is not constantly scattered. When inner order is present, life feels manageable even when it is difficult. Without it, even good circumstances feel overwhelming. Most people underestimate how much disorder lives inside them. Thoughts jumping from past to future, emotions left unresolved, sleep irregular, attention fractured, values unclear. This internal disorganization creates a constant low-level anxiety that many mistake for personality or fate, but anxiety often comes from lack of structure within. Inner order begins with attention. What you give your attention to, you strengthen. When attention is constantly pulled outward, the inner world becomes neglected. When you reclaim attention, even briefly each day, something begins to reorganize itself naturally. This does not require hours of practice. It requires consistency. A few moments of silence in the morning, a conscious breath before responding, a pause before sleep to reflect instead of distract. These small acts signal to the mind that there is leadership present, that someone is paying attention, that not everything is random. Leadership of the self creates safety. When your inner world feels safe, your reactions soften. You are less defensive, less hurried, less desperate for control. You begin to trust yourself to handle what arises because you are no longer avoiding yourself. Daily inner order also means caring for your internal environment the way you would care for a physical space. You do not allow everything inside. You do not tolerate constant clutter. You choose what enters your mind through media, conversation, and thought patterns. This is not about control for its own sake. It is about preservation of clarity. When the mind is constantly overstimulated, it cannot integrate experience. It becomes reactive, tired, and dull. When stimulation is reduced, perception sharpens. You notice subtleties. You sense when something is off before it becomes a crisis. Grounded people are not calmer because life is easier for them. They are calmer because their inner systems are regulated. Regulation comes from routine, from familiarity, from showing up for yourself, even when motivation is absent. Motivation comes and goes. Inner order is built on commitment to basic practices that keep you centered. This may look ordinary from the outside: regular sleep, simple movement, time without devices, honest reflection. These things are not glamorous, but they are powerful. They create a baseline of stability that allows you to meet challenges without collapsing. Inner order also clarifies values. When your inner world is noisy, values are easily overridden by impulse or pressure. When inner order is present, you remember what matters even in moments of temptation or fear. You choose actions that support your long-term well-being rather than short-term relief. This creates integrity. Integrity is not perfection. It is coherence between what you believe and how you live. Daily inner order strengthens this coherence little by little. Each aligned choice reinforces trust in yourself. Each misaligned choice becomes easier to notice and correct without shame. A grounded life does not eliminate struggle. It changes your relationship to it. Struggle becomes something you face, not something that defines you. You experience stress without becoming consumed by it. You experience uncertainty without losing direction. You experience emotion without losing balance. This steadiness is deeply attractive, not because it draws attention, but because it creates reliability. Others sense that you are not easily shaken, that you are present, that you are not constantly seeking something to fill a void. And most importantly, you feel it yourself. You wake up less scattered. You move through the day with intention. You rest without guilt. You reflect without spiraling. You act without forcing. Life begins to feel inhabitable. Daily inner order is not a destination. It is a practice you return to again and again. Some days you will maintain it easily. Other days it will feel fragile. What matters is not perfection, but return. Each return strengthens the foundation. A grounded life is not built by dramatic transformation. It is built by quiet devotion to inner stability, by choosing order over chaos, clarity over noise, responsibility over avoidance. And over time, without announcing itself, that inner order becomes the ground you stand on, steady, calm, and capable of supporting whatever life places before you.